Sejam bem-vindos.
Welcome to Taxation Innovation Ecosystem, where we want to promote the gathering of the ecosystem of entrepreneurs, companies, and innovators. For the opening of the session, we would like to call the City Councilor of Aveiro, João Machado. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Never easy to hold an event such as this one on a Saturday morning, but it's nice to see you all. In terms of the strategy of the Aveiro Tech City, it clearly mirrors what we want for our territory, to become more and more innovative. We are implementing strategies of short, medium, and long run. We are implementing the STEAM education system that has been addressed before, but in terms of the short and medium run, we have different areas with tenders that stimulate our startups to develop products here in Aveiro. And also our Aveiro Tech City Living Lab with a tool to foster all that work and all these entrepreneurs we have in our system. Without further ado, we have amazing people on stage. I'm sorry for highlighting one because Mariana is from a innovation park from Brazil, has been a work of Aveiro Tech system what we have here, because Porto Digital in Recife wants to come to Portugal, and they decided that the city would be Aveiro. So this strategy of Aveiro Tech City starts to take on new results, and Porto Digital, whatever the name, I'm sure it will be amazing for all of us. So, Mariana, thank you for being here. Mariana needs to catch a bus, so I would ask her to, well, she needs to catch a plane actually, because planes don't wait, so I'm sorry, she will start. Portugal Startup, thank you for being here. Pedro Almeida, you are a family. PCI is not in the territory of Aveiro, but that makes no difference. PCI will always be Aveiro, so we work to promote it, and we will continue to do so. So I wish you all a proper session. Thank you. Let's now begin the panel with the name Startup Ecosystem. Inviting on stage the moderator Jorge Castro from BTI and the moderators Pedro Almeida, he is the Executive Director of the Creative Science Park, Mariana Pincovsky, Executive Director of Porto Digital Brazil, and David Magboulé, Head of Growth and Acceleration of Startup Portugal. Good morning. Let me congratulate the city of Aveiro for this brilliant initiative. As Carla was saying, I'm Jorge Castro. I am an innovation analyst at BTI. Pleasure to be invited by Carla to be here to moderate this panel. And as Carla was saying, we have 28 minutes, which is quite short, to talk about the startup ecosystem. And without further ado, I would like to hear our speakers. Maybe we could start with Pedro. Good morning, all. Thank you for having us. I'm Pedro Almeida. I'm from the Science and Innovation Park of Aveiro. And I'm connected to the world of research and development for more than 20 years. 7 years I was a researcher in Aveiro in information systems. I'm based on electronics and telecom. I was the founding partner of a spin-off at the University of Aveiro. Later on, 4 years later, I took on a job in the greatest research center in Europe, which is Fraunhofer in Portugal. I'm still connected to Fraunhofer. I was not able to disconnect. I'm very happy to be connected to Fraunhofer, okay? And for those 10 years, I was the director of Fraunhofer. And I began working the park, but all my path since day one where I started working has always been connected to research, development, technology, innovation. So I'm very happy to be here to share the experience that I have in this field. Good morning, João. Thank you for the presentation. Amazing week. I must be thankful, not just me, but also the delegation from Brazil. I think I will have the opportunity to share with you why we're here. We had the opportunity of visiting Aveiro in April this year, and we were very welcomed by João and the mayor, Ribau Esteves. And I said the same thing the last time when we were at the building. I think that the difference is that you have a tech park already commissioned, being an advantage for what we want to do, but the energy of Ribau, the way that he opened his arms to welcome this tech park. I am Mariana Pincovsky. I'm the executive director of Porto Digital. I represent a park with 355 companies. Because we are in a port area, we say that they embark in our park 355 companies with a total of more than 15,000 employees within their territory. Let me now give the floor to the next speaker. I will explain later. Our intentions in our scope. Porto Digital already exists in the city of Porto, and they got inspired in us. They went to Recife, so possibly we will have a different name, but we are calling it the Porto Digital of Brazil. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, I'm David Magboulé. I'm the head of growth and acceleration of Startup Portugal. Thank you for having me in this beautiful city. I'm a biologist. I've been connected to the health, innovation, and supporting the areas of health. And recently, around 3 months, I've been in a Startup Portugal. I really love traveling and to surf and to eat good food. Yes, I would love for you to share your hobbies of things that you like to do. Well, my hobbies, I don't know if you realize, but I have 3 kids, so I don't have a lot of free time for hobbies, you know? You're talking, well, people don't have enough kids in Portugal. Just call me. I have enough kids. When I have time, I play the violin. I love to play the violin and also arts and crafts. But I don't have a lot of time. I have 3 kids, taking care of my husband, of the house. It's not easy. It's a challenge. I have a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old. We love to ride our bikes on the weekend, even when it rains. And then I have a huge passion for art, culture. I try to enjoy, and the region of Aveiro has a very interesting supply, and I always try to reconcile it with the rest of my life. 5 on stage, not 4, because yes, I'm pregnant. Moving forward to our debate, but it won't be a debate, it would be a conversation. All we are on the same side of the trenches, but there is a difference in the spectrum of each one of them. And later we will challenge startups to pitch. Mariana touched on it a bit, but I would ask the panel to have a reverse pitch, to pitch the organizations that they have the pleasure to be a part of. Okay, for PCI Pack on the region of Aveiro. First, I would like to say that we are the only park in Portugal that has 3 strategic units connected in the same physical area. On the one hand, we have the company incubator, where we have the R incubator, which is one of the oldest incubators of the region, more than 20 years. It's been in the park for 4 or 5 years. There is a history of 20 years. So in terms of experience, all the methodology that we use is unique. It is the best in the region and the best in the world. Of course it is. And we have one other unit, which is the Design Factory Aveiro, which is a physical and human infrastructure that supports the entire process of creating new products, new services, having design as the guide for all creative process until we can reach that purpose of designing the new product or the new service. And we have also a strategic unit, which is our Business Innovation Center. Ends up being a unit that works more with consultancy in terms of supporting the companies and strategic management from the point of R&D, establishing a connection between companies and entities with a strong connection to the University of Aveiro, our main stakeholder. So these factors are unique in Portugal. It is our element that makes us different, because we are the only ones who can give this support, supporting companies from the idea to the unicorn stage. Building upon what you said, Porto Digital follows that spirit. We started in the years 2000. We will have 22 years at the park. First, it was a bit of restlessness brought by the University of Pernambuco in a department of technology that we called C, which is the computer center. And at that time, when our students would graduate, they would go abroad. So there were many projects within the university, and as soon as students would be trained, they would go outside of Brazil. And some teachers have decided to put together this tech park in order to keep that talent in. Unlike Portugal, the Brazilian education system, we call it fundamentally, you call it first cycle, until you get to the secondary, we call it middle teaching. It's not that good in a public network, so that education of the middle class and higher middle class, it is private. The best universities in Brazil, they are public and they are for free. It's a business that's more or less without an idea. They have the capacity to work, they have free access, where you need to pay, and it's not that cheap. So teachers started to be a bit restless, because they who were paying for the training of the students, and they would go to the external market. And that's what we hired in 2000. They only had 3 companies, and I think that around 35 employees. 22 years later, we don't have a short-term project, and you are fully aware that when we invest in the area of technology, specifically in labor, we cannot think on a very short term. It's a long-term thing. So, just to give you an idea, we started with 35 employees, now we have 15,355 companies in our territory. Furthermore, Porto Digital, for those who are not aware of this, is in an historical area of the city. And in Brazil, one other negative thing is that historical centers have been abandoned. And because it is very expensive of what we call the retrofit, you call it remodeling, right? We call it retrofit. It becomes very expensive to do it. So what we usually say is that the Porto Digital project, it's not just for technology. It's a project to recover the historical center of our city. So we have the privilege of taking care of an island. We are within an island connected to the continent, the mainland, in 4 bridges, and we did the work of recovery of those buildings and this urban fabric that is very relevant in our city. So we have a tripod taking on the organization. What we have is kind of a unit for human training. So we are not just a technology program and become a project of a city. It is within that realm that we will come here to Aveiro. So the human capital is a world problem in the sector of technology. We don't want to be here just to hire people. We brought Cesar, which is a training center where there is a degree master's and PhD. Alongside the University of Aveiro, we are trying to accelerate this training of labor so that people working in technology can also work alongside a Portuguese. I think that this partnership is very useful because we are bringing a lot of investment in terms of the training of human capital, which is the bottleneck that we have in Pernambuco. So, Startup Portugal is a non-profit organization leading the national strategy of entrepreneurship, and we are connected to the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, gathering players and leading with incubators, accelerators, startups, and investors. We collect information from all stakeholders in order to be able to present to the government so that they can have support policies to entrepreneurs and the ecosystem. Defining the stakeholders, well, maybe it will be a long debate. MIT tell us about 5 pillars. Some have been mentioned here. The connection with the university, the connection to the government. These are some of the points that are mentioned by the MIT. So the entrepreneur, the university, corporate, and finance. Of course that we could spend all morning talking about this, but let's talk a bit the critical point and the point that where we are taking the biggest steps in these views, in these 5 pillars. If you'll allow me, let me just talk about this. As I mentioned before, when I started in this world of entrepreneurship in 2007, reality was quite different. When we created the company in 2007, the goal was not to die the next week because we had bills to pay. Fortunately, that has changed. This process of creating a startup and a company has been such a radical transformation. Not digital, it was very radical in everything that is the business model of companies, the true challenges of entrepreneurs, and we as entities, I'm talking about the university and other entities, it is pivotal that from a scientific point of view, we shall study all transformations in society, the new concept of a company, the challenges launched to new entrepreneurs, so that in terms of the answer that might be given by public and private entities, the university, public governmental entities, so that there can be an alignment of what is supply of public and private services and the need of entrepreneurs. It's not that I have a strong connection to entrepreneurship. I have my colleague Mariana. She's the director of the incubator and she has the system defined daily. But talking to entrepreneurs, they don't care if the future is profit, if the company is profitable or not. They just want to grow. They want to have funding, and if someone asks them, when will you have profit? They say, I don't care. That's not the goal. Having profit is not the goal. And there are brilliant examples like far-fetched unicorns were never worried about profitability, but they are fighting the good fight because to a certain extent it comes from negative to positive, but it goes from negative millions to positive billions. So this is the challenge from my point of view. And at that time it was different. As I mentioned, the concern was much more financial, economic at that time. But this is the type of work that our entrepreneurs and the challenges that our entrepreneurs face. And in terms of society, we need to adapt to give an answer to these needs. We are in the world, physically we are in the world. It is global, and even in Europe, we are in Europe and we work according to what the European model is. But we need to reinvent a bit within these subjects, within these chapters, because competition is huge. We have the entirety of the United States and Brazil. Brazil is a great partner, a great ally of what might come in terms of Portugal in order to worldwide be able to compete and to have success cases of unicorns and mega companies created from the knowledge that we have at the university. This is very important from my point of view. If you were to see the unicorns, almost all of them have a tech base that is connected to a university. And if this is the source of business, if this is where we get the knowledge that then gives origin to megastructures, we need to try and understand how these things work, how this ecosystem is fed, in order to, in a more effective way and greater success rates, to transform ideas or technologies that are still being addressed in the first stage into unicorns later. Mariana, leading in an organization beyond the axis Rio, São Paulo. Very different reality, right, compared to Portugal? Well, I think that one of the similarities is that when we saw Rival talking about Aveiro, it is a very similar reality to Recife, comparing to Brazil. Here you have two cities, Porto and Lisbon. That's what happens in Brazil. So everything it's in the southeast, between Rio and São Paulo. We are strategically located in the periphery of Brazil, a very poor state. We are in the northeast, where the investment does not get. But the greatest challenge is not money, it's not investment. The main bottleneck today is the labor scarcity. This has become a mantra. Every day we say, how will we train more people in technology as quick as possible with a high level of quality? And those who train the most will win the game of tech box. As we said, competition is global. Companies today choose where they go according to the human capital. And I have huge companies such as Accenture with 3,000 people. When a company like this gets there, for us it's okay because it makes the park more robust. But on the other hand, if I don't have a pool of labor, innovation will end because innovation comes from young kids, universities. You call research, and it's different, the words. Portuguese is the same, but when you talk about investigation, is when there is a crime. You investigate a crime. There we do research, not investigation. So we call it research, you call it investigation in Portugal. So our fear is that market giant in the beginning of the year, we were able to bring NTT Data. I think it's the fourth or fifth greatest companies in terms of technology. They are in our park. They started their office. They hired 200 people in Pernambuco. João, can you think about starting 200 jobs? Sure, but I have a good problem to solve because sometimes it's 200 of those kids who are trying to start their companies. So they just leave their startups and they are hired by those companies because they pay them more. But I cannot kill the innovation of the park. That's why I have incubators, accelerators, in order to foster these youngsters to start their own company. Capital ends up appearing one way or the other. But if I don't have labor, nothing will happen. So our focus as Porto Digital, and it's a beautiful project, okay? Because I am very proud. We come from a very poor country, so we have a program that we called the digital boarding, if you will, where we take those who come from a public school, which is that reality that I discussed with you, those who come from primary teaching and secondary. So the higher education, we pay for it because they cannot get in the Federal University of Pernambuco, not a lot of the openings. So alongside the city, we will train 2,000 youngsters in 3 years. So we are very aggressive in terms of labor because those who have the greatest number in the sector of technology will become the winner. And Startup Portugal, David. What is the factor? I'm the last one, so I'm the one with less to add. I think that we as an ecosystem in Portugal might be very proud of our evolution. As I was saying, I think that our mindset is that we are not businessmen, we are entrepreneurs. This nomenclature becomes part of the everyday conversation. And if you have children at university and want to start a startup, will you stop studying? What will you do? No, they might be motivated to do something, yes. But this is also the result of something, this work of entrepreneurship. They have been launched more than 10 years ago. So it is a change of culture. It is a generational change. We have the support of not just Startup Portugal, but the government and European entities. They have been sharing the proper conditions for people to bring their services and products to the market. This is very important. The local power, the national power, universities, financial entities, access to funding, people, knowing what it is, being connected to innovation, all of them are important. But what makes this work is the connection between all of them. Being able to communicate, being able to establish some sharing, best practices, cooperative networks, not just nationally, but also internationally. And in Startup Portugal, there is a new team, a new board, and a new board in terms of goals, because we are aware that it is cool to be entrepreneur, it's cool to be a mentor, but that's not enough. We are an ecosystem of early stage for its better part, and that's nice, sure, but we also need to be an ecosystem for scaling up, international, open, global. So we are now working to make it professional, structuring it to open the doors and opportunities to our national startups in a globalized world. Building upon this idea of opportunity, how is it an opportunity in terms of all the others? In terms of what David said, what might be the great opportunity PC gives to entrepreneurs is the fact that we are connected to a community that every day is worried with giving an answer to what are the needs of companies. Because our motto is quite clear, we work in a community with our community, so daily we are always worried in having a set of initiatives, companies who are part of our community, putting them together, because that is our role. If we didn't do anything, we have 3 buildings with around 100 companies, and they would not communicate because they end up being focused on their work. People who are at the office, and they don't know who they are, they don't know what the other company is, what they do, and that is the role that we do, stimulating conviviality and a set of views connected with our community. And then opportunities come about, those connected to the business world. If you tell us how we got the great business opportunities, they told me, well, once in the airport in London, someone who I didn't know sat next to me, and all of a sudden he was, I don't know, one of the greatest entrepreneurs. This is real life. And when we get outside of our environment and have a coffee, that's where we get the business opportunities and what helps the companies to overcome challenges and to be successful. And this is an opportunity for the country connected to this ecosystem. What is very important is the optimization of resources, because there has been in Portugal a very idea of financial resources being distributed for entities that are connected to entrepreneurship, and we saw what these entities do. They have no tradition in entrepreneurship. They are not the true agents of promotion of entrepreneurship in Portugal. And this leads to effectiveness, because we are not paying a lot to a lot of people, so this doesn't bring the opportunity to have the dimension that's necessary to work and to have in institutions that the funding that it's necessary for them to give an effective answer to challenges of clients of those entities. Incubator that we have never had the goal of being profitable. Our goal is not to get to the end of the year and have an incubator that's 50 or 100,000 euros of profitability, but it cannot be the other way around also. We cannot have an incubator that needs to be the pocket self to take on this financial balance of the incubator, because that would be a proper usage of the public funding. And I'm not saying this just because of our incubator. It's just an example. What would be important is that all these structures would be properly funded in order to give an answer in having the human resources and physical resources necessary to support entrepreneurs. And we work a lot, but it's not that good to go around to do the best because of this waste of resources that's happening around. This is an opportunity of improvement for the country. That would be the message that I would like to leave with you. Duly noted. This is what we are doing, yes. I can tell you that we have more than 160 incubators. Comparing to France, France has 200. And the difference, and more than making sense, we are also trying to understand what that work means, and it has to do with our focus. It's a scale-up mindset. This accountability, making sure that we all grow, that we are all contributing, and things, simple things. Sometimes I need to be careful with what I say, because one thing that I have been thinking a lot is that it doesn't make sense that I've been working more than 5 years at an incubator startup. After 2 or 3 years, it's because they didn't grow enough. We are afraid of failing, that it does not work. We need to get this ambition, and that depends. We need to work a lot with startups from the scientific world, and it's hard. It's hard for the researcher, investigator, if you will, to have this launching of a company, to be entrepreneur. Maybe you don't need to change the mindset or the personality. Maybe this investor wants to research, but it needs to get the capacity to have something that it doesn't have in Portugal, which is an interim CEO, which is a manager with a lot of experience in terms of the business, taking care of the company. The CEO becomes CTO, Chief Scientific Officer, and this interim manager does what they don't want to do. And just to tell you that we need to have this ambition of wanting to grow, wanting to know more. And then the startup is there for more than 5 years. And I do agree that we need to put this idea of resources to get proper results. 1 minute so that you don't lose the plane. How is this connection, Portugal and Brazil? Internationalization of Portuguese companies. Portugal is the door of Europe and also opening the doors of Brazil to Portuguese companies. And this exchange is quite beneficial. We have this facility of the language, we have a place here, and that was one of the reasons for choosing Aveiro. It has a beach, it's very similar to Recife, and this is a city. Europe, this is very cold for us because where I live, either it's heat or a lot of heat. You have 2 seasons, hot and very hot. So we don't even use jackets there. So this adaptation to this region we had because of colonization. So Pernambuco is a state that has a lot of Portuguese characteristics, a lot of legacies, and this makes it easier for us to come here, and that is the best for this region. And this possibility of internationalization of Portuguese companies, and that is the great opportunity of a digital port here in your city. I do apologize, I need to leave or else I will lose my plane and everyone is waiting for me because life continues. I've been here for a week and they have a lot of problems I need to take care of, so I need to leave. Thank you. Now, we will have the presentation of 6 innovative projects developed in the last 4 months within the scope of Aveiro Tech City Challenges. The first project, DeepNeuronic, will be presented by Bruno Tegadão. Good morning, I'm Bruno, I'm the co-founder of DeepNeuronic, where we focus on transforming the surveillance systems made easy by automatic detection of anomalies and dangerous situations. The problem is that we have an excessive number of cameras and it's becoming worse and worse because supervision is done by humans. This makes it that incidents happen after they happen. Most majority of companies have hundreds of cameras available per person, and studies show that only after 20 minutes of monitoring the attention of security guards goes down. So we make it easier by we automatically detect abnormal and dangerous behaviors, making a real-time analysis every day. It might be considered, and you can customize your own model selecting the situations that you wish to detect, and then you can relax, save time and human resources that our models do the hard work. With DeepNeuronic, we can detect more than 20 different behaviors, situations as falling down or being lying on the floor, and dangerous situations like abandoned objects, fires, road accidents, shootouts, vandalism. Most of our competitors focus on detecting road accidents or weaponry. We go much further than that, detecting more than 20 different anomalies. Existing solutions generalize the problem of surveillance for all clients, but each client, its establishment is different, is unique, so we provide an artificial intelligence that can be configured by non-technical people. This analysis is done in real time and not a posteriori in the situations that we have in the market, with more than 700 million cams installed by surveillance companies and municipalities, which is what we have here in Aveiro Tech City. It's a huge market, and we hope that it will double up to 2028. It's based on software, so we can install in SaaS, software as a service. We can also install in low computing devices. That's what it did here in Aveiro. And we can also install a local server if the client wants to keep the images in their own premises. It's already at Lixo Polish, in Covilhã and in Aveiro. We have 1.5 million in investment for the agreements, and we started partnerships with cloud and high computing services to expand our scalability. We are also finishing our in-camera software, that is the development of Aveiro, which will help us to establish partnerships with telco companies. We want to start with the security services controlling commercial areas and manufacturers of cameras in Europe. In 2025, we want to reach to the surveillance control in airports and manufacturers of cameras in Asia. All of this is possible because of our brilliant team of engineers and machine learning, amazing PhDs, where Vasco and we are very experienced in the computational view and video surveillance. We've worked with Google, Huawei, Abstract, amongst others. And also we have the support of the venture builder Health Tech Lisbon, with directors of Oracle, Microsoft, amongst others. Thank you. Let me also thank the city of Aveiro. Brilliant, brilliant support. Thank you. We would like to call on stage Rita Massurano to present the project Nevaro. Hello all, good morning. I'm Rita Massurano, and I'm here to show you how we are revolutionizing the health issue. Once there was a girl who realized her hands were shaking, and the doctor told her, "That's just anxiety." But does that make sense? That was me. And you know that 1 in 4 people suffers from a certain mental problem, and the average time between the first symptoms is around 11 years. And as if that was not enough, 24 in the top 30 of world countries with a greater consumption of drugs, 24 are European. So when that kind of problem comes from our area of work, it will lead to burnout. More than half of workforces are reporting symptoms. And so, as the old saying goes, it's better to be safe than sorry. So we created Wally. This is a brain that works as a personal trainer for mental health. It's provided to companies, launching daily challenges, small challenges based on strategies of positive psychology and that are customized to our needs. We have a very practical example that by the microphone Wally will understand how things work and recommend a number of cycles so that I can bring back my pattern. All this will allow us to get a set of data that are aggregated in a confidential manner in order for us to understand the needs of the workforce. Everything connected to this biofeedback was developed in the Faculty of Sciences of the University of Lisbon, and we have been testing and published many results in the psychiatry world in the last few years. Wally, as I said, is being applied, and in the first 6 months it clearly was an idea to see that there was an improvement of 15% in terms of health management. So it was quite a big increase for what we were hoping for. Alongside it, we have been awarded nationally and internationally because of our innovation in this gamified digital approach of mental health. As I said, our technology started in the academic environment in 2018 within an MA in biomedical engineering. In 2020, we started to work on the rationale of this product in order to reach people, and in 2021 we launched the beta testing with SONA-IMC, where we had an engagement of 40% within a study group, which is quite interesting. In the beginning of the year, we started working with the municipality of Aveiro with a very practical goal. We were in the health celebration where we did kind of a geocaching with our technology, with the tool that we were developing and testing from scratch, connected with augmented reality to this management of mental health. With these challenges connected the key points, 1.5 kilometers of activities that we did here, and we had around 60 people involved. Then we started to work with Altice Labs with an improved product, defining strategies to realize how we would make the engagement so that we had a different approach. And that's what we did. In just 1 week, we saw a penetration of 23% within the global workforce of Altice Labs. The next step will be to design an impact report in terms of mental health, anxiety, any issues, and also productivity and engagement with the community. This will allow us to prepare our product in terms of going to market. We have 2 pre-client states that are already paying, and we have suppliers throughout the country and islands. We have some requests also, but in order to get there, we need this round of investment. Around 600K in order to foster our sales. We have a team that are really passionate about human behavior, psychotherapy, and psychology. We all have a brain, so we all need to take care of it. Thank you. Let us now give the floor to Afonso Cunha. He's about to present the project Zoomguide. Hello, I'm Afonso Cunha. I'm a member of Zoomguide. Zoomguide is here to give an answer to the lack of information about heritage and tourism information. There are solutions, sure, but solutions are not financially accessible to all institutions, more than 100,000 euros. Their users need a mobile app that's inconvenient and harms the experience of the user. Zoomguide is the easiest way to get to know a museum, a monument, or a city. Our system is like Shazam for what you see. You just point your cell phone and via the camera you will get to know the information on different formats, audio, video, and augmented reality. We have an app for visitors and tourists and a content development for professionals such as teams from city councils, museum curators, or even independent creators. This allows people to point their phone to any object, and via algorithms we recognize what's in front of us with content with different formats, and this allows us to create and manage all of this in a very easy, low-cost manner. This brings Zoomguide a step further. Our goal is that people that have some vision problems can access these museums in an easier manner. So this is a web app that using the camera allows you that as you go into an area you will see what's around, and when you get to a previously defined area we have a descriptive and informative of what surrounds us. It's a system of information that as you walk along this explains what's around it. We can also see the system working. This platform is not specific for those who have vision problems. It might be used by children, adults, and also sign language. Our goal is that with Zoomguide and now include, we can increase the accessibility of all of Aveiro's museums. We have it in Santa Joana, Arte Nova, and Aveiro Museum with a very low cost, without maintenance in terms of hardware, because all this process happens in the smartphone of the person. It will be easy, adaptable, allowing to add new museums, new areas of the museum, and to use Aveiro as a case study to promote this project nationally and internationally. Within this project we have some risks and opportunities. We are now testing the effectiveness of the algorithm in people that have visual disability, and we are improving the capacity of the algorithm to deal with situations where there are groups of people or areas where there is no information or visual information to white corridors, identifying ways to define them. We also see opportunities as expanding Zoomguide to other areas of users, and this is an opportunity that we have materialized. And people with hearing impairment, we think that it is possible to have it working on an offline method. Our algorithm is working offline, but the content is still requested from an external server. We do believe that next year it will be possible to have it working offline, extending the algorithm to detect dangerous situations, as for example slippery floors. In terms of our business model of software as a service, we have an app that we sell our clients, and then we have a premium that follow this through. As we expand into a greater set of cultural areas and cities, we want to activate mechanisms of users, thus exploring new ways of revenue. In terms of competition, we include the component of accessibility and content. All our product is focused on these two axes. In terms of traction, we began selling. We have revenues higher than 50,000 euros with a very interesting margin. Our product is scalable, cloud-based, and we have 55%. These are some of our clients, public entities, private entities, and we have a great feedback of these users, as well as metrics of using the product. One that I love to highlight is the interaction that people have in Zoomguide in terms of the conventional system of QR codes, 470% higher than the QR code system. And I'm available for any questions you might have. Let me thank the team of the city of Aveiro, and they have supported us since the beginning of the Zoomguide. Thank you. We will now have Rita Santiago to present the project Parkware. Good morning all. I'm Rita Santiago. I'm here to present the project Fiscal Feira that Parkware has been developing alongside the city of Aveiro. So what is the challenge that we are trying to solve? Well, currently the city has monthly fairs, some of them with a great number of sellers. It's not time to bring paper with us. So what we try to say is that by a part from Fiscal Feira, it's possible to have all the information that they need to manage the market and the sellers, to see what they have paid and not, and also on those who manage it in the back office to have one that asks for it. So in my presentation, I bring you the operators, those who have a direct contact with them. There is the possibility where we can see of finishing the information of a regular operator. And what can we see in it? Well, the total that have participated, how many happened. In terms of markets, we have a selection of what we are analyzing. If we are in a month, the number of events will be inferior, and also to see what has been defined that had not been paid and what kind of payments are in default. One other requirement has to do with getting the information of everything that happened and sending this into the managers to being something that it's very different, and other technologies have to do with the NFC reading. That button that we see there allows us to validate the cards, something that I will show next. One thing that our app brings to answer the challenge of this is a way to see the past, present and future, to see how many were there, how many were in terms of them, to have an idea of what will be a visual example of what we might expect. We can see what is the state of payment and what is the value that's in default. One other thing that was neat was that currently managing that it is made by a document where operators need to get to it, seeing that the size of it is in agreement. But via our app, one thing that we see is that there is a geolocation that allows us to identify the size and to validate that Dona Rosa, for example, who's the seller, has the place P14, and there is a need to check those places. In terms of reading the NFC, as I said before, the innovative thing is that having a single card per seller, we can reduce what they need to bring with them in by the reading to see if the payment is in compliance or not. One other thing that we see has to do with occasional payments. Sometimes sellers are not regulars, they just come once in a while. And this allows to manage that payment by an occasional payment defined as we see, putting the payment for the part that is designed. This is the way that we brought innovation. Thank you for your attention. Have a nice day. Francisco Manso is here to present the project Trigger.Systems. Unfortunately, this is a very common image, and I'm sure you are aware that water is a very important resource. We have a severe drought. Those who know that water is a very important resource knows how hard it is, and we all have measures of saving water in the taps, in our baths, that only represents 30% of fresh water. That's not where the impact is. Do you know what it is? It is in irrigation. 70% of water is in watering, with a fundamental effect for all our food chain values. And there is a lot to do here. It won't stop. This is a consumption of water in the world, so we think that we will have 15 more in 2050. Of the 70% of water spent on irrigation, 50% is wasted. These figures are scary. Why? Because managing watering water or irrigation water is very different to manage. It's very hard without the technology to be able to manage this process. Wind. We are all aware of how wind works. Do you know that 70% of water is lost as long as you have 20 kilometers of wind? This is a farmer who thought that his soil was uniform, and it's not. The color shows it, or the topography making water to go from one side to the other, and they are not able to adapt. More than 20 tricky parameters with new challenges, for example, managing energy of the sun, because water is energy. We need to use the wind when there's wind. So this is a very, very severe problem. So programmers from 10, 20 years ago are like this. We need to go there and we need to, maybe they have some remote control, but they are not smart at all. This is a challenge. Technology brought this opportunity of addressing this challenge by computational modeling, dealing with all this complexity. And the benefit is to get 50% of water from our watering systems. Most of it is manual and increase 20 to 30% productivity. And why? It means that we will double the profit. Most of the income is to pay costs, so this means to double the capacity of having money to do better. I have more than 20 years of experience, managed more than 20,000 hectares of water of different agriculture. I lived this usually, and I gathered to a set of people, software and hardware to address this issue. We had an investment of Portugal Ventures to help us form a team and to solve this. And we've developed a platform that can deal with all this complexity. We are trained in being technologically boring, but I have an example to share with you. Imagine that I am the employee that needs to go to a meeting and need to fill out with water. Usually what they do is the same water in all glasses regardless of what people drank. We have water everywhere, and that's not the way we do it. We look at each one of these people, each one of the watering systems, and we imagine what will happen, if it will be hot or colder, and we give it the necessary water for tomorrow. And that per se makes a difference of 20% in water consumption. We can take 20% just because there is water for tomorrow. A lot of strategies, but this makes it that our platform is very efficient in managing water. The view is not to tell the farmer do this or do that and go to your systems and change it. We know how hard it is. Our platform goes to irrigation controllers, adjusting their quantities in order to get just the necessary water. We had to create hardware. We had 3 controllers created to give an answer to the market in order to have controllers that could deal with all these things, and currently we address this type of markets. We have pilots in all of these, clients paying for these 4 areas, and the market is quite big. We sell hardware to distributors or manufacturers, and then we sell software as a service via software. We have more than 40 clients, cities, manufacturers, resellers, and I would like to explain what we did in Aveiro. We had the challenge. It's a different reality of what we were used to. This was the area of intervention, around 12,000 square meters with different typologies. We had a specifically difficult obstacle. Aveiro is already doing it properly. We are used to see cities that are careless or less careful in managing water. So it's always good on the one hand, but on the other, results are not that clear. We connect all of this. Some are electric, the others were relatively easy to connect into the internet, so we started to address waste and the everyday work dealing with irrigation. This is our humidity probe. It is something that we can literally put anywhere in the world, and that probe will behave as a physical one, helping to model each of those regions. So the probe is expecting the existence of irrigation and prevents it 2 days before rain. And this is the consumption. We follow everything that's water flows in order to detect any kind of ruptures. This is the Aveiro chart. It's not very easy to change the irrigation regulators, and in blue we have our system telling us to water more or less. Our savings comes from the difference between the blue and the red. The red, it's 3.7 or 3.6. I usually work with 17 when people are less careful. This type of task is in the gardener, and the gardener just doesn't want to be bored. So that's why savings are more significant. How much do we save in terms of water? Results, okay? We are expecting, according to the benchmark, to water 725 square meters. We water 300 and something, so we save half the water. Just to tell you that dimension is difficult for the time we were here testing for 550 people to have all that water support in baths, and everything that we have for water is supported by the savings that we have created in an area as small as this one. Trigger is always looking for people who can help us multiply these processes in other geographies. We are now working in Brazil and in Spain, but it's always important to disseminate and to help us reach other people, and also the investment because any startup, we want to go quicker, and investment is a very important part of our equation. Thank you. So the last one on stage will be Bruno Abreu to present a project developed by SCUBIC. Good morning all, pleasure to be here. I'm here to present the vision of SCUBIC, which is the monitoring of energy efficiency in terms of consumption in buildings. Well, why buildings? Throughout the world, buildings such as this one and many others, our houses, our apartments, contribute in almost 30% of CO2 emissions worldwide, which is a severe problem that we must solve to fulfill with our goals for mitigating carbon up to 2050. But we can also reduce the consumption of water and gas. As we know, we are in a water crisis, an energy crisis, but to digitize this kind of building. Problem is that 85% of these buildings have no monitoring device, and as Lord Kelvin was saying, if we can't measure, you can't improve it. Or Peter Drucker, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So with this metering in mind, we've built devices that can collect this information so then it can be worked upon. In Aveiro Tech City, our challenges, we had two of them, two buildings that were different, the Municipal Stadium of Aveiro and the João Afonso School. And in the first visit to the school, this type of devices that we have, switchboards from the 80s, they are amazing, very good materials, but without monitoring. Or even in the building which is from the 2000s, although there is some monitoring, there is still some Windows 98, so it's an OS from last century, so data cannot be worked upon with our algorithms. Based on this challenge, we wanted to collect water and electricity. We have a very easy to install, very cheap, very low cost, that allows us to send it to our web platform, and also consumptions, always sending alerts, trying to follow the energy efficiency of these buildings. Now, via any device, we can access in real time to data of water consumption and electricity of the school and the state, and this is quite important because it allows us to connect the consumption, if there is any consumption if the school is closed, or to have energy peaks that should not happen. Not just the school, but also the stadium. The stadium is used a lot, but there is games every weekend, and certain tabs might still be open and they are only detected 7 days later. In terms of preliminary results, we need more data to get more info. Even in school, analyzing devices that we believe that we can reach a reduction of 13% in the consumption of energy of the school, but also analyze and detect almost immediately that the school has a loss of 5 liters per hour, which is not a lot. It's below 1% of the consumption, but we're talking about 45,000. In the case of the benefits that we have by aggregating all this information to water, electricity and gas in the world, at the mobile platform we have an holistic vision of the building, and not just a metering that we have, we can also make this optimization of energy to see where things can be mitigated. And it is information about the installed equipment. We can connect all this information, and then basic equipment that any of us can install, and it's always real-time monitoring, detecting anomalies in real time. I'm about to finish. Our business plan is still being shaped, but we want an installation feed, but of course that this depends on the size of the building or the amount of equipment that or floors or areas that we wish to monitor. And as I say, it depends on devices. We want to do it as a process, and the monthly reports in order to see if we are improving or not. With all this type of thing, we need to install our devices and to monitor and assess water consumption and gas consumption. So as I said, this is a project with Aveiro Tech City that we will continue. We need more data to train our algorithm so that we can then build the digital twin of the buildings that we are analyzing. It's a virtual replica of the building, and then we can cross it with the prices of electricity, trying to optimize the carbon emissions, and also We need to be the ones to control air conditioning, water supply, lighting, to mitigate costs, and this is something that will happen up to the end of the year. So I'm hereby finished. Sorry for being late, but let me tell you that water, power and gas will take care of it. Thank you. Let's now begin the panel investors round with different investors who will debate market practices and investment trends. We would like to invite on stage moderator Jorge Rocha from BT and the investors Paulo Borges, Eduardo Sete Câmara and Rita Vilas Boas. Hello, I'm José Rocha. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm Senior Innovation Consultant, Managing Partner of ConAngels, where I work as an investor, and I have a venture builder helping startups to grow in 2 continents. This being said, thank you for being with us. This week I'm in Porto. We have one from Aveiro and Eduardo from Lisbon. Please tell us who you are. Hello, I'm Rita. I was born and created in Porto. 1 minute. Biotechnology. And I really love this area. In the last 25 years, we've seen a lot of evolution in this field. Although we have worked in corporate, internationally, then I worked in other companies, and then I went to work at a startup in China, where we sold the company. We did the exit to a multinational, and I spent 4 years in China with different offices, and it was an amazing experience, which brought me to where I am now. And we went with people from BTI, and I started to realize that my experience alongside my background in biotechnology was an asset, working as operator in many sectors, in many industries around the world, where we can see the potential and how to grow, how to develop. And in the last years, that's what I've been doing, helping in political parties. I'm one of the founders of Iniciativa Liberal, and we have 8 representatives. Eduardo. Good morning, I'm Eduardo. I'm Brazilian. I've been in Portugal for almost 5 years. I work with venture capital and entrepreneurship for more than 15 years. That's what I did in Brazil. I invested in venture capital funds. I was an entrepreneur. I was an investor. I went bankrupt. I invested money in my own startup. I lost the money. A lot of learning. I worked with BTI. I was the boss of José, but I decided to spend my time in investment to the long run, and 70% of my business I work in Angola in terms of entrepreneurship and investment, and 30% to Portugal. Eduardo always takes the opportunity to say he was my boss. So, hello, I'm Paulo. I started filming for YouTube when I was 13, now I'm 26, so half of my life has been working on YouTube and online content, and that's it. Thank you, Paulo. Starting with Paulo. Paulo, he doesn't like to talk about himself, but he's considered to be the greatest Portuguese YouTuber. I met him when investment, I think it was your first investment in my startup, eClub. So starting with Paulo, how was it? What were the first steps for that investment? I had no idea what a startup was or entrepreneurship. José was the one who told me about it. When I discovered that world and in the possibilities that I was not aware of, it was very eye-opening. The fact that it was in Casa dos YouTubers, that was the project that we had at, and the fact that José was from Aveiro was also very important to get into that field. So it was a very cool experience. I'm sorry to say cool, I don't know if I can. And since then it has been a great focus of mine to invest in startups that, in my view, bring something that I'm interested in and to the rest of the world. Thank you. Follow-up question for Eduardo. How did you start as investors? We need democracy. It seems to be close to a limited number of people because it's a mission to help and to have more transparency in the field of investments. In the 50s we had the venture capital, especially in the US, with this concept of startup, but we are investing in companies of people who we know who they are, and then people who we don't, but then we get to meet and we want to help and to follow. My MA thesis was in Denmark, lyophilization, working with milk bacteria to bring to yogurt factories, Danone and Nestle. It's something that I'm passionate about, biotechnology, although I've worked so many times at Procter and L'Oréal. And when I was in China, a friend of ours had two startups. One was more or less, the other not that good, and he had the problem of intestines, and fruit and vegetables in China are not fresh. And we started to think, how will we make a product that might be transported without preservatives? Because when I was doing this, is that I could not do the process without preservatives. It's not just because it's bad, but because it's expensive. And Tomás Freud, she is the founder of Kango, had this project. And then two friends of ours who were there thought that it would be interesting, so we had a friends and family. We were in 2 units, Serie A, and then we focused on the US. But it was the right time to do it. It happens a lot. But now that I do it, people come to me, and I think that the first time it is a friend who needs help, management, biotechnology. It's also that we can be open and not just be in our comfort zone where a new world begins. Thank you, boss. I could give you the easy answer to tell you how I started. I did this because it was the first internship that I was able to get, and then I stayed. But the truth is, I was able to get an internship and I was not an investor, I was an employee. I worked at a company which was an investor and I was paid by someone. The option back in Brazil and now of being an investor myself, although I manage resources from third parties because we have two groups, Lisbon and Porto, I also invest my money in Portugal and in Angola. And I think that this is motivated by the view that we will find projects in which you believe. You believe in the company, you believe in the project, and you want to have an impact in helping it to grow in the long run. I've worked for 5 years at PTI, was the main accelerator here in Portugal. Acceleration programs usually have a beginning and an end, and then after the end, with some exceptions in the world, this is not criticism, it's the world as a whole, the relationship does not continue after the acceleration program. And that is something that I missed in certain moments. There was to a point of, okay, I want to have some projects in which I believe, and I want to dedicate my time to these projects, including paying money, then doing new things in terms of the short run. Okay? Thank you. Paulo. You were saying that you were investing in startup or ideas that was interesting to you. What kind of startups? Now have to do with mental health. Startups that are in my niche, which is social media. And recently in cryptocurrency, NFTs. What kind of investments? Many times we talk about investment and smart money. And we have someone who has 4 million people on YouTube following. How do entrepreneurs make this approach? What is your approach? Well, usually the way that I have to promote or to help a startup is to disseminate, to explain the product in a way that's easy to understand so that people can identify with what I'm saying. That's why I only choose startups that I can identify, or else I won't. It doesn't work naturally, and it's not something that I'm interested in. Eduardo, you spoke about 2 investment groups in 2 different countries. In which main sector do you invest, and what type of tickets, value of investment do you invest? Well, here in Portugal, the groups are still defining sectors, so we have been working differently. Porto and Lisbon, we are now finishing the 3 first investments, 1 in Porto and 2 in Lisbon. One of the documents have been signed, the others we will sign next week. I cannot tell you what the startups are because they should say what we have invested in, not them. Tourism, cybersecurity, and agrotech. In Angola, we have been paying attention with fintech, housing, logistics, and health. And we have a different model here because valuations and the need for capital is very different. We have been investing between 30,000 and 200,000. The average is 100,000. In Angola, investments vary between 30,000 and 300,000. We're a bit different in Angola, whereas some of the startups don't need an initial capital those who generate cash flow, because we have a huge risk where we need to bet on projects that can have a very quick generation. One of the first investments that we did was housing for social houses. So we were able to get an agreement for 10 houses for 93,000 euros. That's the value. But they needed 35,000 for the contract, for the agreement, and they will only pay 2 weeks later, but the houses had to be built in 1.5 months. So we were able to do it, 35,000 euros. And it was great. It worked. 2 weeks later, the client paid. We got our money back. We lent them without interest. And now the money that's left in terms of profit, we are using to reinvest in new projects. So we were able to get a different agreement also, that Monday I think we'll have a meeting to close the contract for a school. That's how we have been working. Thank you, Rita. I have 3 different vehicles of investment because it's different scopes. Chilling is one of the first founders fund. We started Chilling 2 in 2000. I think we have 40 investments. The industry is agnostic, but 60% is in Portugal. So we have had software as a system, fintech. It's in our website. You can see chilling.vc. I'm a limited partner, and I try to bring a lot of deal flow. Well, whatever fits, right? And early stage and seed. The fund was oversubscribed, so 56 million. Now we have 1 million invested, but between 100,000 and 1 million, we have a professional team managing it. It's not me, but I'm involved, and I try to be, because it's just 3 or 4 women, limited partners in 50. The investment team, there's no women there, so it's something that I am very open about it. I'm not happy with this. So I have created a vehicle with the 2 friends. They came to me and they called my attention to Kenko, and we have been investing in companies where we can, food tech, okay? Ideally, female founder in the team. It's not mandatory. I won't stop investing because of that, but it's something that I like. Early stage, where we can cooperate, be active, and to support as advisors, as board, as someone who at 2 a.m. you are getting away from it. Well, I'm that kind of person. I'm there for what may come. Proper investors are the ones who are there for the rough moments. And then our tickets are around 2050, money that we have our own vehicle, and then a loan, because they have their job. One lives in China, the other lives in Kazakhstan. So Portugal, UK and Israel. Personally, Portugal, UK, Israel, with a focus on global markets. It might be the US. And femtech, health tech, lifestyle. We won't be building laboratories for CRISP, but we will do things that might improve a bit. For example, endometriosis with biomarkers for cancer, but also marketplaces where I can actually not just open my contact network, but adding value, scientists, and not only. Yesterday I was saying this, it should be mandatory after finishing college and going into a PhD to have 2 years of sales. projects, brilliant ideas, being able to do the technical part with patents, things that are quite hard, and then they don't know how to sell, and they didn't think about the product and the price where it should stand. No, we need to think the same way from beginning to end. Sometimes working with algae and biotech, what will the price be? What clients? Well, someone will take care of it. No, the founder, the CEO, needs to talk about it. Sometimes that's my role, to wake up, to make people think, to bring people to think about the business. Because the best person to sell the project is the CEO. And if the CEO and the founder cannot sell, and very proud of doing it, it should be mandatory. Everyone should work in sales. And with a smile, but I'm very serious about it. Usually we tell entrepreneurs to be in love with the problem and not the solution. And when we see this profile of the entrepreneur, sometimes we ask, why do we need this profile of an entrepreneur? For pitch, for sales, to understand. I didn't say that, okay? We need to have on our team people who bring different skills. So, what I'm saying is that technical part, technology, research, science, it doesn't all have to be the same, okay? That's my issue, you know? When we see a team, what do you look for the most in terms of business model? Skills, scalability? What are the main criteria in selecting the investment? Well, everything. We want everything, right? You are always looking, or at least I'm always working for scalability, global, that can be easily scalable, and it's not that easy because there is agriculture. I have an agrotech project I will tell you about at lunch. I'm completely amazed with a woman who has 6 patents, has a PhD, so the patent belongs to her, and she's an introvert. When she finished she was an entrepreneur, she had a startup, she's working, and she tries to be surrounded by people who can support. All of this is trained. Some people say, well, you go to the public and you talk about this, but I do train. It's not born with us, right? So we need to train, like Michael Cloud says, 10,000 hours. I don't know if that theory is valid or not, but some can reach this level, some can't. So we need to improve a lot. So I'm always looking for that scalability, that impact, to have an audience, to have a market in categories that I dominate, that I can bring my expertise to. Crypto, not something that I'm comfortable. I have invested in it, sure, but it's not something, well, my son, well, he knows about it. But Femtech, like knows, consumer, okay, consumer oriented, which is very hard, not a lot of money in Portugal for consumer. So I try to bring investors and lead investors that can then help in the following sets. But we are always looking for that global people who are obsessed with it, that are obsessed completely. People that, well, this person will be successful regardless of the startup or not. This person has the enough resilience to take on the negative parts. So it's a set of technical traits, okay, and soft skills that you are looking for. And coachable. This is very important. We need to have people who are stubborn, sure, sometimes arrogant, no problem. But people who know and want to hear, to listen, then they make the decision. But they need to know and want to listen. Thank you, Eduardo. Trying not to repeat what Rita said, although I think that she said everything. Yes, I think that's the way to go. Obviously, you have infinite reasons to not invest, okay? Any reason is a good reason to not invest. And I look from the view of with whom do I want to spend my time, to whom do I want to dedicate my time. And I truly believe in two things, starting with what Rita said, not just coachable, but because I invest early stage, I see the entrepreneur by those who I believe that it can be then who he is, okay? Because it is in a trajectory of growth and I need to see that it can be the person that it needs to be. And at the same time, one of the most important things is that I believe that people's actions are a summary of who they are and what they are, positively and negatively. So I always assess the action of people, what they did so far with what they have, with what they're missing. These are people who see more opportunities, or are they people who see more problems and anything is a problem? Nothing works. Because for the good and for the bad, I really love to spend time with entrepreneurs, to help them to develop plans, to review agreements. We do have a team to help entrepreneurs, but at the end of the day, they will have to do the job. So the person needs to be clear that they know that they will do the heavy load. Taking advantage that Rita was the one who said a bad word, talking about, well, I do take on the lesson from Rocky Balboa, you know? And this brings to mind the question that my mother told me. My mother told me this. I'm the youngest of 4 male sons. So my mother was always very, very strict to make sure that we behaved. And I remember that my mother told me, you will learn how to have it hard at home so that you know how it is on the street. Because that's what happens when you're an entrepreneur. So we need to understand that the entrepreneur knows how to take on the hard things and that they can just move forward. And this is something that you don't do by what they say or the way that they present themselves. It's their life story, the way that they work in the startup itself. Thank you, Eduardo. You started when you were 13, so I'm sure that in the beginning it was hard to reach where you are today. You started with a career as a musician. You were in Rock in Rio with your new album. And all this environment around you, is there a scarcity of startups? Why? Why is that? Why is that? Maybe there is still maybe there is a stigma in terms of influencers. The understanding is that we only joke around or we only show about our lives, but we are activators of everything. We can promote products as long as we connect with it, obviously. But I think that scarcity is there because of the lack of interest of influencers themselves. They end up having a revenue. Sometimes it's enough and they don't want to move any further. I think that might be wrong, and it might be something that influencers can promote to others in order to invest and to bring new ideas to the table, because they are in that world specifically. We saw in Brazil an investment fund of influencers. Do you think an investment fund from influencers, they have their own vehicle of investment? Yes. I think that we have people to do it, sure. Venture capital, the model that we have today, is dead. We need to rethink it. When Serena Williams or Kim Kardashian, when all those people not only have brands of cosmetics, of perfumes, and they also want to be investors, and it does make sense. Serena Williams wants to invest in black women. Why not, right? I love the word creators, not influencers. And you have multinational brands in consumption industry where I've worked. You have multinationals and you have the indie brands of cosmetics, and then you have a vast area because multinationals cannot do small brands grow. Then they buy brands and they grow it, but this empty area, this blue ocean, this free area, there is a lot of area to move on. We'll have more companies and funds to support with content, because you see that indie brands, you have independent brands, okay, because of their content. And then we're missing that step that might have to do with, for example, research, might have to do with distribution and retail. I don't like the word influencers, you know. I like to call them creators. TikTok, Instagram, there needs to be a common ground, okay? But we are looking for people who inspire you. If we use it for good things or not, I think that's a completely different thing. It's not one person, it's a lot of people creating value. Well, talking about investment, someone say that crisis is coming with the new inflation numbers. Well, what is the impact that you see that we are 6 months away from a crisis, war in Europe, a very volatile part, and what is the impact in terms of startups? For those who are not sure that we are going into a severe crisis, at the end of next year there will be a great surprise to all of you. I think that we are not aware about the dimension of this crisis, but I'm sure it will be huge. Let me be frank. Europe is one of the places that will suffer the most. Probably you will have some investment that will wait to happen because you are waiting for the scenario to decrease. That's a fact that will happen. If you are good now, I will wait 2-3 months, you won't have money, things will be more expensive. So probably we will see a bit of a decrease in investment till the end of the year, depending on what is the reaction of the support. You might have an uptake here. I have betting a lot in logistics and agriculture. I think these are two sectors that will be very, very important, because this recession is because of the inflation, and this will be affected not just because of energy, because energy affects the entire of the production chain, but we will also have a crisis because of food, not because of scarcity, but because of difficulties in logistics. So we end up having great opportunities in that area. Indirectly, I think that the area of mental health will grow because we will have a mega recession. I don't know what will be the best angle to go into it, honestly. The crisis is not because of the inflation. The United States and Europe printed more money in the last 3 years than in the last 300 because of COVID. I don't want to deny, but what were you waiting for? What were you expecting? Then there's a war, energy crisis. So you've been following a 16-year-old girl. So they all need that we need to be green when there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a balance, you know? Now we are in a terrible situation. If in the last 30 years we could decrease 1/3 of hunger in the world, we can lower from 1 billion to 600 million people. The next 3 years, we will return to where we were 50 years ago. This is tragic, tragic. The crisis has been here for a year. Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, smartest people in the world, or wealthiest people, they start selling assets 1 year ago. And the social media in Portugal didn't say anything about this. Inflation started in June. No, it started in October. BBC, CNN, all international TVs have been communicating this clearly. In Portugal, they've just been hiding it. Inflation will save the government. Listen to me. So, no good times are coming, sure. But you know that crisis, the last 2 crises, was when I got the best financial results in my companies. Because there are people who love to work in growth. I love to work in a crisis. It's not the stress, it's in the difficulties that the competition shakes a bit. And the people that I work with, you are the average of the 5 people around you. I try to keep smart people around me. So I think that we will have a lot of opportunities. I don't believe in being a vulture. I've worked with Chinese people for a while, but I think we can have win-win-win. Exactly what you were saying. If companies were assessing with an idea in software as a system, you go to Silicon Valley. If you exit the university, 10 million euros of assessment. And now it's 3, 5, because just wait for a while to see how things work and to understand the personality and the resiliency of founders. Let's wait to see, because we do have time. Patience. Patience is one of the greatest virtues. Everything, but I think that alternative ways of energy, after globalization, I think that we will have a turning around this location because of costs and to do things that are local for the community, for, after 2 years living alone, we are animals, right? We are like chimpanzees. We live in a community, and that's what we need. I never imagined that in 2 years I would change my life of traveling throughout the world, and now I'm between Douro, Porto and Lisbon. And that's it. So if this worked for me, I think it will work for everyone. People want to live the city centers, go into the country, the quantity or the amount of foreigners who are here. They come to Nazaré, they come to Aveiro, they come to Braga, they come to different areas. So this will bring more democratization of money, and that will be very nice. Prices increase, sure. 1 year ago, we were talking about something where you said Europe is printing too much money, we will go into a crisis. And I said, no, I don't think so. It shows that you were right. So what is the impact in your assets? What is your approach in terms of switching the crisis? Looking into the side of people, and this doesn't answer your question, but what I feel that people will do is that they will get desperate and there will be a peak in gambling. Out of desperation, of course. And that's the question, right? What can we do? Honestly, I didn't think of this yet, but I think that this is what happened during COVID. When people are desperate, they end up being a place where we can forget about things, forget about the situation that will happen. And we can also, if it comes about, we can present a solution to people, a kind of a solution, as long as it is proper. Thinking about what you were saying, it's interesting because you cannot change society in one generation. And I think that what we have been doing, I will not talking about policy, I'm talking about the literacy that we are doing in the Mais Liberdade Institute, and I support many institutions in Douro, in Bagos Douro, which is an institution for boys and girls with a lot of potential, and it's time. It's following it. It's being there. Learning how to manage money, learning how to realize that you should not spend more than you have. Basic things, simple things, but we need 1 or 2 generations to change it. And we see it because of the audiences, of what people watch on TV. I don't think that the government and the state should do this and that. No, civil rights movements. That's why we created an NGO. Instead of criticizing, we want to do something for it. Not just criticizing, not enough money to invest. No, let's get up off the couch. Let's have more Ritas, okay? Showing that we can do it and not just staying at home criticizing. But we need to have time for people to learn. And you're right about one thing. Desperation is a thing. When I traveled in Latin America, in Africa, my family was there for many years. When you are in the threshold, and not poverty, but of human dignity, and you have €5, you think, I will spend it. So we need to take ourselves from this vicious cycle into a virtuous one, to understand if we can leave the situation we're in. Sometimes it's because of negotiations and governments returning to what happened. I really liked Angela Merkel, but the stance that she took with Putin and the situation that Europe has put the population in because of power and energy, they won't pay for it. It's us. And it's quite shocking, you know. Coming to investment again, one of the last questions would be talking about the transfer of technology, going to universities, bringing patents from the shelves, creating products and new solutions. In Portugal, we still see a lot of difficulties in it. We saw some universities trying to convince PhDs to do something with their research and so on and so forth. Eduardo, why do you think this happens? What kind of solutions? Because this benefits investors, okay? More startups, more possibility of investment. How do you see, why do you see this happening? And what kind of solutions do you think could be implemented? It has to do with what Rita said. I think that you still have a disconnection in terms of the university and labor markets, the real economy, if you will. I think that this could be a long debate, you know. Our teaching system is to grant titles to differentiate individuals, then skills to the labor market, you know. So we have people that should be working at 22, but they need to take their MA, their PhD, their postdoc to be different from others. They spend years in academia, and the university itself. When I say that it's not for all, it doesn't mean that everyone should have access. Everyone should, sure. But university for those who want an academic life, those who want to work, go and work. Because you have a huge disconnection, this becomes clear. Even those who are academic, who research, who manage new patents, they still have a very academic mindset. And it's not easy for them. I was sitting with Natasha reading the article from from the Economist, patents, innovation, science. This is connected with innovation that is then deployed in China, in the US, in Europe. In the last 30 years, we have invested 200 B. China in the last 20 years, it's at the level of the US. The US and China invest 3 times more in research R&D. Of course, a lot has to do with defense, sure. Many of the money of the state was used privately. So we could have invested. It doesn't mean that the state must do it. We see a lot of things being done with European investments. But I don't know if we don't have rich people enough, because we have people, millionaires in the US, who built a laboratory at the faculties, laboratories that support. If we do it, well, if you do it, you pay. If you don't, you pay all the same. So what is the goal? Why should we do it when I can be comfortable at home, buying a football club, for example? Incentives, of course. But of course, we are all living of grants, okay? Those who should be working full-time, we don't have an academic in research. You need to teach to pay for it. You're not researching, you're teaching. So, the results, obviously, in John Hopkins, they would have better results, sure. But that's it. Not just the incentive system, I think it has to do with granularity. And we're talking about, I forgot the name, Porto Digital, she was here, Mariana. Okay. The expenditure per capita for education in Brazil, it can be compared to proper European countries, because as she said, in Brazil they invest a lot in public universities, but 50-60% of the students are functional illiterates. They know how to read and write, but they don't know what the content is. And that makes no sense. In terms of research, Brazil invests in research, but what type of research? Basic research. No, applied science, basic science doesn't bring innovation. It's important to debate this, and we invest a lot in pure science. Applied science, applied to real things. Theoretical PhDs, well, okay, but each one does whatever, but we need to get, that's what brings patents, that's what brings innovation. What about the future? You work with the future to be pioneers of new technologies. The next 5 years, maybe you connect to the angels, who knows, create that what we have discussed. But what is, in terms of the solutions, what do you think? Online, digital, that's the future, but I think that it will be video online. That's it. All sectors. Agriculture. I think that's it. Thank you. Let me thank you all for being here. It was amazing. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you for having us. We will invite you all for a drink at the entrance of the theater. Thank you for being here.